Would you like to own a genuine Staunton chess set made by Jakes of London? If so, you're one amongst many. And I'm going to go briefly through a system of how to recognise and identify a good, well-made Jakes of London Staunton chess set. So what we have here, yes, this is a Staunton chess set. There are a lot of them about, made by many different manufacturers. Some have the crowns on the king side, rook and knight. People think that identifies a Jakes set. No, the only thing that identifies a set as being by Jakes is where it is stamped Jakes London on the foot rim of the king, on the white king, and depending on the age of the set, also on the black king. So, there have been a number of different ways of ideas for how to identify the period that a Jakes set came from. They were first made in 1849, and if you would like one of the first flush of their manufacture from 1849, then you need to put your hand very deep in your pockets, and you will have to know a good deal more than I can cover in this rather brief video. But basically, first thing you're looking for is, do all the felts match? Have we got other pieces added into the set? These sets were bought and played in clubs. The pieces were played next to each other on the tables, and quite often after the game the pieces would be added into the wrong boxes. So we've got quite a lot of Jakes sets on the market now from the 19th and early 20th century which have got pieces from other sets in. So first of all, if all the felts match, fine, that's a good indication that they're all from the same set. But how do we identify the year? Well, there are systems in place to append a chess player's name to the style of knight and so on. That's fine. That's what you want to use. But concentrating on just on the knight makes it very difficult. For example, this set was originally identified as being from 1900 to 1925 from the shape of the knight. But all these knights between, this is Professor Sir Alan Fresh handbook on Jakes chess sets, which is absolutely essential if you're going to, find out a bit more about them. They all look broadly similar, and it may be that they just use different carvers at different times. A closer look makes 1885 to 90 a candidate. So we've got both kings assigned, so it's after 1890. It might be 1885 to 1890, it might be 1900 to 1925. Well, that's quite a spread, 30 years makes a difference. One thing we can look at is the shape of the cuts on the bishop. First of all, we're looking, does it have a complete ball on the top? Because on the earlier sets, the cut was more nearly vertical and the ball was divided, quite often split, with the almost vertical cut. So here we have the bishop from 1885 to 1890, clearly identical to this bishop, with the full ball on top and the very angular cuts. So that gives us a clue that this is liable to be the 1890 or very, very shortly thereafter set. We can also look at the rooks as a double check, look at the depth of the crenellations, and because later the crenellations got very much deeper, earlier they were very much shallower. Also the pawns can be checked out whether the collars are a very, very thin one that the early sets had, or whether it's slightly thicker, and so on. We can do the same for the queen's crenellations as well. So look at the whole set. First of all, check that all the pieces match, that they're all from the same set. And one thing to look at if you have a piece where the felt's loose or come off is to take a look at the lead weights. The lead weights in Staunton sets are always screwed in, and they have the marks from an insertion tool, 4 prongs. Sometimes they're very shallow, sometimes they're very deep, depending on how hard the tool was stamped into the lead, and then the lead was screwed into the set. That's on. This is not a weighted set. Now the unweighted sets like this came, generally speaking, in a slide top box. This may be a JX box, but it doesn't have the label. The label would have been stuck on the top, and there are a considerable study of the different labels and the years of that in Professor Fair's book as well. A lot of work has been done on the different configurations when they were incorporated, 1802, and that's Jakes Limited. When first of all it was John Jakes, then it was Jakes and Son, Jakes and Son Limited, whether the label says chessmen as one word or two words and so on. So you can take all these things into account. But just if you want to buy a weighted set, it would come in a lift-up lid box like this. This isn't a lift-up lid box. After about 1890, the boxes started being divided to keep the two colours separated, and the label would be stuck on the inside of the lid in that type of box. Then you can get into the more esoteric area of the carton beer boxes and the leather caskets and so on. That's really getting rather specialised. But for example, I bought this set, nice, great big 4 1/4 inch set, missing the crosses off the kings. White king signed, black king signed. It's after 1890. The problem with it was that the pieces are not all from the same set. So what does one do when you've bought a set? Quite clearly the pieces don't match. It's been a club set, there's probably no jiggery-pokery going on. It's been bashed about. Look at these pawns, poor sorry fellows. Bashed about in a club, mixed up, you know, look, almost every pawn's got some damage. The rooks have managed to come through fairly well, but you can quite clearly see that from different sets. What I shall do with this, I shall restore this and simply keep it for my own use. It's a wonderful set, but by no means could it be sold as a Jakes set with all the pieces from one set. And its value, if it were complete, undamaged with original pieces, would be thousands of dollars. In this state, it's probably worth a couple of hundred to someone to use as a plain set, and that's what I actually use it for. Here we have another set which was somewhat unfortunate in that we bought it as a set. The seller did say he thought the knights might be from different sets, and there are in fact 1 or 2 pieces from other sets in there. Don't quite match up. You can see the difference in the knights. Again, really, where you've got a set with where the kings appear to be different, for example, look at the thickness of the foot ring on the kings. Where you've got royals and major pieces from another set, it's not possible to restore it and call it a good set. You've really got to accept that it will always be a mixed set, and that's what to look out for. One of the things to look out for is not just the damage that these things sustain in competition play, but you need to look at, first of all, look at all the felts. Is it signed on the kings? Do the pieces all look the same? Are they all from the right period? If you're going to buy a Jakes set, you really do need Alan Fair's book, there's no question about that. Gives you a chance to make sure that what you're going to buy is what you think you're going to buy, a good, complete Jakes set. Thank you. Would you like to own a genuine Staunton chess set made by Jakes of London? If so, you're one amongst many. And I'm going to go briefly through a system of how to recognise and identify a good, well-made Jakes of London Staunton chess set. So what we have here, yes, this is a Staunton chess set. There are a lot of them about, made by many different manufacturers. Some have the crowns on the king side, rook and knight. people think that identifies a Jakes set. No, the only thing that identifies a set as being by Jakes is where it is stamped Jakes London on the foot rim of the King. On the White King